And we're live. Welcome to online debates on the 31st of September because আমি জানি না কয় নাম্বার এটা on the motion this house prefers a world and sound alike can have PM during the speech. Here.
Hello? Hello?
Did you
Am I
post the
audible?
link, man?
You
Hello,
are
am I
audible.
Yeah.
Link ta post.
Okay, wait. 1 second. I just closed my notes. Allah, shit.
দিন যে কি করবে 5 মিনিট এক্সট্রা প্রেপ টাইমের জন্য ছেলেটা
But I actually closed my notes. Shit.
ঠিক
Hey, link
কি হতে পারে
Tosif, link ta de.
Link
I'm ready.
দিচ্ছি
ওই
Ready, ready.
কমেন্টটাতে পোস্ট করে দেব
করে দাও,
সবাই ভাই
করে
দেখবে
দাও, link পরে দিচ্ছি
Tell me when I start.
স্টার্ট কোন না
এই ফারদিন মাইকটা মুখের কাছে নিস
Yeah. Starting in 3, 2, 1, go. I'd rather live in a world where I don't have to tell the parents of Michael Brown Jr., Trayvon Martin, Dontre Hamilton, Eric Gardner, Tammy Rice, and Freddie Gray. Now, the reason their kids are no more is because we have failed them as a society. We come to you with the team line from side government. That a world where you aren't judged or shot down based on the color of your skin, or judged based on the accent behind your tone, or how beautiful your face is. A world where I'm considered to be equal to Mahathir Mohamad and not 10 times uglier than he is a world that side government is extremely proud to propose. We're going to talk to you about PT. Before we talk about that, few clarifications on our model. It's not merely about a world where your facial features are alike, but we're going to bite the bullet and say that it's some world where you wear the same clothes, the same lipstick, and you have a perfect identity in appearance. That means that all the problems that we're going to talk about in today's scenario, that everything is something that's going to be solved. That even problems like class-based discrimination or race-based discrimination are all problems that we inclusively do our best to solve from side government. But before that, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about what we're going to bring to you from side government today. First, we're going to talk about the essence of humanity and how we ensure that the type of country that we live in is something it's principally justified for us to pass this model. Secondly, we're going to talk about how social interactions happen better. And thirdly, we're going to talk about how side government is the side that protects the value of uniqueness and diversity. Hey, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take side opposition's best case and deal with it. That in places like the United States of America, countries that are known to be flag bearers of the civil rights movement, is where we're going to go in and have the debate. All right? These are the type of countries where things like microaggression hurt your ability to lead a life of dignity. But if you're a Latino or an immigrant, the chances of you receiving a job and making sure that your family can live a life of dignity is pretty much non-existent. We tell you in countries like this, where the very fact that you come from a race that is of a different color, or you come from a community that makes you inherently look different, is the exact type of problems that get exacerbated in the best case scenario in the United States of America. Let's not even start the debate about the whole entirety of the rest of the world, where these problems get exacerbated, where these people don't even have the legal protections that they at least enjoy in the United States of America. It's their burden to prove to us why the scenario is so shitty in the United States of America, how the world is going to be better off in other worlds. Why do we tell you in scenarios like this? Why are other alternatives not going to work? Because of the mere fact that black individuals or Latino individuals are systematically oppressed because of the existence of property rights, where the nature of property tax inherently means the scope of education is limited for these individuals, and the ability to make a similar impact or come out of the oppression is limited. But that's not where the debate is. The main issue of the debate is that it's principally unjustified for us to press the burden of change and press the burden of always having to live up to a higher standard, and always having the pressure to constantly prove yourself above individuals who have been historically discriminated against. The fact that you're a black person, the similar qualification as a white person, you still have to go in and prove yourself further just because of the color of your skin. We think it's principally abhorrent from side government that we are pushing the burden of change and pushing the burden of having to constantly prove yourself on this individual. We tell you in a world where these differences do not exist, at the exact moment of time, we principally win out this debate because we never push this burden on this individual. But secondly, ladies and gentlemen, on the idea of stereotypes and societal perception, you think about the reason why you never have a conversation with someone else just because of how they look. That you never have a conversation with someone else just because of how they look. You never go in and talk to a black kid across the state just because you perceive him to be a member of a particular gang from a ghetto. Even if that assumption is not right, the assumption never gets broken because you never bother yourself to walk across the street and make a conversation with a black man. Yeah, sure, there are a few white kids who have black friends, but for the majority, that interaction never happens in the first place because you never bother yourself to go beyond the perception of what that person is and never bother to understand what the individual actually is and actually looks like. Under our model, ladies and gentlemen, we go a step further. We don't only remove the we don't only focus on removing the biases, but what we do and add significant benefits for, that we remove the necessity to focus on removing the biases, because guess what? Those biases don't exist in the first place. We tell you, ladies and gentlemen, we understand that even after they have that conversation, they might not necessarily like each other. But we think that we would rather have a world where they have a conversation at the first place and part at the different ways rather than not have a conversation in the first place because of how they perceive the other individual to be different. Because the way that they will part later on would rather be based on their set of likes and dislikes and music taste and sports taste, and not just because of how the other individual looks. Thirdly, ladies and gentlemen, how is side government the side that protects uniqueness? We think that the metric for uniqueness or diversity shouldn't be based on how you look or how beautiful your facial features are, but rather based on the type and width of things that you actually go about doing. That means, for example, that you're unique because you love drawing or because you love punk rock and would dance after some weird ass shit music at 5 a.m. in the night. That's the exact type of things that make you unique. We think that we protect diversity because we focus on what diversity should actually mean. That it should be based on your own preferences and likes, and not on some arbitrary notion the lottery of birth assigns to you. Before I move on, yeah, Pure.
So we would rather have a world. So we would rather have a world where, like after the civil war. After the civil rights movement, a black man and a white man are able to communicate now, rather than suppressing humanity and their differences.
I think we clearly talked about just communicating is not the same thing as ensuring these people have a similar quality of life, the similar amount of dignity. We tell you that in countries like America, microaggressions still exist to a large scale. Police brutality just exists to a large scale. Just because those people are allowed to vote doesn't necessarily mean that all the issues and all the problems that they face are issues that have already been solved. If that's the stance on side opposition, it's morally abhorrent for them to just ignore the issues of the black man in today's debate. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, we think it's important that people embrace the type of things they are, like such as drawing, and don't necessarily reject themselves. That's because they come from a particular identity. For example, I think it's unfair if a black kid at school in the United States of America stops playing basketball just because that community in America perceives playing basketball as a black thing to do. We think, ladies and gentlemen, they shouldn't be ashamed of playing basketball in itself. The moment of time we go in and say that this model is passed, that's the exact moment of time everyone looks alike, is the exact, we stop attributing race or skin tones to particular actions or particular hobbies, and instead realize that those hobbies and those actions are things unique by itself to the individual in question. We think it's important that we stop this attribution of actions to the person's race and rather understand that that's an action that an individual has chose to do, because that's an active choice that the individual has made. The exact moment of time we attribute it to race is the exact moment of time we demean the autonomy of that individual coming from other communities to make that choice. We don't think that problem exists in our model, because under our model, the necessity to ever change who you are and the necessity to ever change the type of things you do, for example, playing basketball or listening to retro music, is some pressure that never exists, because you don't have a pressure of being white or doing things that white people do or doing things that Russian people do. You only do what you feel like doing. We think, ladies and gentlemen, when a such thing as arbitrary lottery of birth means that you are systematically disenfranchised and your ability to live a life of dignity is something that's taken away from it. It's principally justified for us to tell you that we would rather prefer a world where all humans not only look alike, but all humans sound alike. We beg to propose.
টাইম কত হয়েছে?
8 minutes 10.
Oh yeah, আর just আমি 3 to 1 করে।
হ্যাঁ, সবাই কিন্তু একটু এই যে কি জানি বলে নিজেদেরকেও টাইম করবে, আই এম কিপিং ট্র্যাক অফ টাইম, বাট লাইক অবভিয়াসলি কলস দিতে পারতেছি না। অপোজিশন লিডার, Opleader
মিউট
কে?
করো।
Mahathir, op leader.
আরে মাহাথির, জি মাহাথির।
ফারদিন মিউট কর।
অলরাইট, জি।
এই একটা স্পিচের সময় অন্য সবাই প্লিজ মাইক্রোফোনটা বন্ধ করে রাখো। ইটস ভেরি ডিফিকাল্ট টু আন্ডারস্ট্যান্ড দ্যাট স্পিকার।
আমার অর্ধেক স্পিচের সময় কি জানি কেট করতেছিল। It was very difficult to focus.
দেব। Is Mahathir here?
মাহাথির কি কলে আছে?
আন্তরা ব্রো মিউট করো।
মাহাথির কলে আছে। আচ্ছা, তোদের গার্ড
Can you guys hear me?
কারা? হ্যাঁ,
হ্যালো, শুনতে পারো?
গার্ড বেঞ্চে কারা আছে? আচ্ছা।
Tosif, can I start?
হ্যাঁ, শুরু কর।
Okay, 3, 2, 1. You know, ant colonies in themselves are wonderful things. Ants can build highways. Ants can create nests that are 10 times their body, 100 times their body masses. We tell you the world that Fardeen advocates for is a world full of ants that work as a collective whole. We tell you that they don't value the individual inherent value of a different language, of a different culture, of a simple Punjabi, and of sacrificing a cow. We tell you that the moment you let go of these differences, the moment you let go of these little joys, and you create your bland sort of joy in your world, is the moment where you think that things like racism, things like sexism can never be solved, when we're seeing evidence to the contrary, when we're seeing a world that's uniting together and solving issues as they occur. We believe in your world, it'll be harder to fight for these changes. It'll be harder to get these rights because it's so insidious. In the best case, you are a society built of one with the pursuits of none. We tell you we are proud to propose. In my case, I'll be giving you two constructives. First, on a principal defense of individualism, on the first layer of differences and why they themselves on a physical level matter. Secondly, differences in cultural levels and of what you wear, of how you speak, and how in these things you can derive more fulfillment for them. My secondary argument being that why even if our principal concession is that there are more conflicts, why we can solve them better and have more diverse forms of happiness in our world, something that's exclusive in our case and can't be gotten from theirs. 3 points of rebuttal I'll be providing to you. First, on their whole idea of whether they end up solving problems or avoiding them. Secondly, their whole benefit that they can provide on a class-based issue and a race-based issue. Thirdly, how their concept of uniqueness works and how Fardeen claims that choices are limited under our world. First of all, the whole idea of differences. Understand that the moment they say that, look, problems are inherent in this world, that black people can't get rights because of microaggressions, that we need to shift away and make sure everyone wears that white jumpsuit and everyone speaks in English in itself, is not solving the problem. You are avoiding it. Black people aren't getting their rights back. Black people don't exist in your world. We tell you that these black people had families, these black people had their own culture, their own customs, their own neighborhood, and their own forms of happiness. Even if that happiness was hard fought, even if that happiness was marred by microaggressions at every level, it was happiness that they themselves had, and it was fulfillment that they had. The moment your proposition goes into place is the moment that these people don't exist. Is the moment that their thoughts, their families, their daughters are all homogeneous white people that speak English in that same Brooklyn accent that you think they do. We tell you that you're not solving the problem, you're not creating net happiness, you are removing it. We tell you on their idea of benefits that act on a class-based issue. Problems like inequality still do exist. We tell you problems like religious differences based on ideologies,
Mahathir,
liberal versus conservative, they still do exist. Class-based issues aren't going away. You're just removing the apparent ones because you can't be bothered to solve them. I'll be showing to you why they're solvable. We tell you that in current world, we've seen the feminist movement, we've seen the Black Rights Matter movement, and the Black movement itself have gone on and actively fought against microaggressions. We've seen that, we've seen that how when police shoot people like Tamir Rice, we go up in arms and we actually make sure that doesn't happen again. We hold people accountable. We make sure microaggressions in the workplace don't exist because now we are more aware society because we understand our differences. We tell you that the class-based argument falls. Secondly, on a race-based issue, you take away the entire gender, the gender that has made massive advances and strides into their own treatment, you take them away because you arbitrarily decide that they can't be good enough. On to your alternatives, where you tell me that, look, minorities cannot get the rights. We've told you that they can. We can push for economic growth in development in communities like Brooklyn and Detroit. It's pretty easy. These property rights aren't an insurmountable barrier. Their whole claim of uniqueness and how they can serve it better is a farce in itself. Because the moment you tell us that, look, I'll be able to pursue guitar and I'll be able to be an artist in itself is contradictory, because you create a collective society, a society that is homogeneous in nature, where I can't wear my art, where I can't showcase my art or make it a part of my identity, because that's something that will never be occurring in your world, because I'll always be looked down upon by my peers, my family, and everyone else in their world, because individualism doesn't work. Individualism is looked down upon. Your choices, your whole argument in our world, being a Russian means you can't be a violinist, doesn't work. We tell you that people are breaking boundaries. As a society, we are opening up, and we tell you that choices are more open and diverse in our world. Onto my own case of the principal extension. We tell you individualism in itself allows for differences. That means that on a physical level, when I look like a black man, when I'm an Asian, this is the part of my social fabric. This is the look of what I dress and the shapes my thinking, my black culture, my customs of being in that area, being an Asian. We tell you that these differences, these varies the social interactions that I have. When I meet someone from an Egyptian descent and when I meet someone from my Bangladeshi descent, we learn more, we interact more, we can understand. Sure, there is more conflict, but that conflict isn't so great in your world that people can't have joyful conversations, that people can't exchange ideas and learn and grow. In a globalized world, we believe that's occurring more than conflict, and we are trying to take down conflict, something that you can't take down because your society is homogeneous in nature. We tell you that it's also more discourse about individual struggles and victories, the value of being unique, the value of what I went through as someone who's an amputee, as someone who was black and came from a disprivileged family. We tell you that in your world, it's bland. It's harder to be unique. It's harder to be an individual because my Punjabi means I'm different. That means my uniqueness and my thoughts are undervalued because that can never be a part of my inherent ideology. My ideology is always this sort of abstract concept that I keep to myself but never portray outward. We tell you on the secondary layer of cultural differences, we as a nation fought for the language in our language in itself. The moment you take away that language, the moment we tell you that cultural differences stem from language differences, from physical features. We tell you that when you rob them of their expressions, when you rob them of how they portray themselves, that is the moment where you create a less varied society that ends up not being fulfilled, because they end up being this homogeneous society that never ends up understanding themselves. Because as a Bangladeshi, when I look what Fardin makes me want to look, I'm not myself anymore. I can't fulfill my commitments as an Islamic person, as a religious person, or as a liberal, or as a conservative, because these are things that no longer stands in their world. Principally, sure, conflicts are more, but these problems allows for individuals to be themselves. 7 minutes. When they are worked through, we tell you that different diverse forms of happiness can come through. Why do we say that? We say that when someone from a Muslim community, someone from a Hindu community, someone from all different walks of life can experience happiness and they can vary that happiness through themselves, is something that's an exclusive benefit on our side. We tell you that in your world, that in itself is gone, because the only happiness I can get is of being a white person speaking a specific English accent, and that person has to do something that the society dictates, and that's homogeneous in nature. Your collective joy may come from best case of me getting that job, but the small joys of wearing a Punjabi and going out with my kid to the mosque in itself is robbed from me. The small joy of being a Hindu and going to the temple, being someone who can portray the dress I want to wear, just simply going to ecstasy and buying my favorite shirt is gone. We tell you that in your world, your happiness is dictated by a collective whole, is dictated by someone who is a dictator where you don't keep any. In our world, such happiness is spread out to individuals and they can decide what to do. In our world, conflicts are more, but they can be worked through. In our world, we provide a better principle and an outcome-based justification. We believe we take this debate home. Thank you. Hello.
8 minutes, 17
Hello.
seconds.
No PI, GG.
Can we have DPM?
Hello, that's a chill.
আচ্ছা
Chill. এই DPM কি তুলছো?
Fardin, তুই first minute কি বলছিলি যে we will bite the bullet and make everyone have the same language.
না language
Same language, same dress. Same clothes,
মানে
same language.
আমি বলছি same clothes, same dress. I don't think I talked about language.
Bro, sound the same. বাংলাদেশে খুব sound same করে না?
মানে it doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, the vocal tonality sound the same, not the things they say.
Hello?
আচ্ছা
মানে
wait,
কি?
Clothes are
তুই রিবাটাল ধরে দিতেছিস কেন?
হ্যাঁ, guys.
The hell?
Debo, you shouldn't talk about this. কারণ weird লাগে.
ছাগল। DPM কে?
এই তুলছো?
Fardin to DPM কে? তুলছো? তুলছো?
তোমার শোনা যায় না।
Acha, am I audible? Am I audible?
না
Yeah, you are.
audible না।
You are.
হ্যালো তুলছো?
Hello, আমি কি audible না? মাহাতির চুপ থাক।
হ্যাঁ তুই অডিবল।
Starting in 3, 2, 1. The whole case of side opposition lies on a single fact that uniqueness does not exist. We inside proposition concede the fact that we may give away some forms of uniqueness, but nonetheless, certain forms of uniqueness still exist. The fact that you have a language, the fact that you have a culture, the fact that you have a religion, all these things still exist. What we want to remove is that certain forms of uniqueness, certain forms of attributes you never give a consent to. Those are what we remove. The looks that you have, the skin color you have, the skin features you have, some that's not your consent, we are not willing to take that. Before I move on to my positive case, the rebuttals, right? So firstly they say, oh, guess what? We have a world without uniqueness. You don't have culture, language, religion, homogeneous society. It's a wrong claim to make. Why so? You still have local and regional cultures. Even you still have a Bangladeshi culture, and you still have an Indian culture, you still have an American culture, regardless of your looks and religion, and even that can something give you the amount of happiness you want. Secondly, so guess what? Even if we remove skin color, we have caste-based issues and differences exist. Understand? Even in that case, our world makes sure that at least we have one problem less. We don't have the problem of racism in itself. Thirdly, so guess what? Even if racism exists, they have a mechanism to fight against injustice, because some people are protesting against the black people, the black kid who died. Understand what is your mechanism to fight the injustice? It does not happen for years. Why will it become successful? Even if it becomes successful, the cause that is there, that the black kid who has already died, you cannot bring that back. You're rather happy to bring that child back rather than your vain attempt to say, oh God, we care about black rights. You rather have a world where that doesn't exist. Lastly, so uniqueness does not happen under our world. We say that uniqueness happens in different forms, in forms that you know what kind of person you are, what kind of possessions you have, what kind of personality you have. That is why we support uniqueness under our world. So what do you have from side opposition, from the DPM, right? Firstly, understand that why is it principally unjustified? Why will it principally justified to have every person looking the same and sounding the same, right? Understand this, that the looks you have are a lottery of birth. The very look that you have a certain skin color, that you have a certain skin features, that you have a bigger nose. All these things are things that are arbitrary, and all these things have an impact on your life. things like social class, things like social class, all of these are things are a lottery of birth. But we believe from side proposition that every human should be equal, and also the fruits they're born with, those of them should be equal as well. As a result, we believe on side of proposition that on the principle of justification, regardless of whatever utility you're going to give us, we are still okay to make sure that every individual has the same amount, every individual has the same amount, has the same amount, has a principal justification of the same amount of looks looks and sound. So even in this case, they talk about how, what does Mahathir talk about? These are things like how we protect uniqueness, right? Understand that on the case of uniqueness, what we are willing to have, we may give away on this part of uniqueness. Understand at least that uniqueness comes at a cost. When your uniqueness comes at the cost of racism, when you show that, guess what, I'm a white supremacist individual who comes at the cost, I'm a white supremacist individual whose uniqueness comes at the cost of doing racism against the individual, we are happy to make sure that you don't have such.
TY.
We are okay to make sure that that uniqueness doesn't exist. We are happy to have other forms of uniqueness. So what do you get from me, right? Understand that even without the fact of racism, there are other matters in which your looks matter. What are those? Those are things like A, beauty, B, social class, and lastly, also religion. Understand when it comes to about talk of beauty, how does your looks impact you? Understand certain individuals have certain advantages and certain disadvantages when it comes to looks. Someone is born more prettier or someone is born less uglier. Problem is there's always a social standard on those people. There's a social standard of what is beauty and what is not. Understand, don't fall within that particular criteria. The people who don't fall within that particular criteria, it harms their social life interactions. Why? Because society treats them badly. Society treats a beautiful woman in comparison to other women in a different manner. This means they decline to interact with those women who don't meet the social standard of beauty. They treat them differently. When it comes to things like love life or marriages, those women are deprioritized. As a result, those individuals go through a cycle of microaggression because of the look they have. It harms their identity, it harms their confidence, and it harms their interaction totally. Why do we not support it? Because understand, those individuals never opted into those. Those individuals never opted into having a worse of look. And we believe they shouldn't suffer this because of a lottery of birth. We are happy to make sure that those individuals rather have the same looks. Before I move on, Mahathir.
Sir, do you think that these people, that everyone in the world, should be cut short to their automatic denominator, that is, everyone should look the same, just because some people are a little prettier or some people are uglier? We don't think in a world that is something that's a defining factor for everyone.
That is a very question that you have to ask certain people you have to ask certain questions to the people who are the short people, to the people who suffer because of this. Because there is the benefit of being more prettier. That is a granted temporary benefit which you don't feel good into. Understand, you feel the feeling of being beautiful, it stays for particular days, months, years. After a particular point of time, you take that for granted, and that does not give you happiness at all. That happiness doesn't impact your life in a better way. Understand, when you as an individual suffer, you don't meet the social standard of beauty, the harms you go through, and how society does not address you, those problems go to that person for a longer period of time. We are happy at protecting those vulnerable group of people. With the uniqueness you talk about, they only stay for granted. A Bengali feels good about Bengali future, Bengali culture for certain years or certain years of their life. After a certain point of time, that does not provide any marginal happiness. We are rather better having a trade-off where we remove those happiness and rather have a make a world where certain people who don't meet the social standard, we make those people better off. Understand also the social class argument. Understand that we also talk about that the looks also include things like your dress-ups and clothes. Understand, when you wear expensive clothes and someone else does not wear those, someone wears poor clothes, that in itself creates a source of difference between those people. What do we mean? A rich individual can always show that individual is rich, and the poor shows they're poor. Problem is, it harms their interaction. It makes certain stereotypes those people can never escape from. Those as a result, interaction with those individuals are harmed. And when you see a poor people, you have your stereotypes which harms your interaction. You as a rich individual, the people treat you differently, and there's a harm of interaction. So the problem inside proposition we believe is But the problem is that when your looks are something you don't deserve to have a more advantageous or more disadvantageous. But we rather suppose we make sure that these forms of uniqueness don't exist. But we rather suppose when you talk about uniqueness should exist in such a manner that those should be in other forms, i.e. the kind of person you are, the kind of possessions you have, the kind of contributions you do to your family. That's uniqueness more willing to happen. We understand that trade-offs do happen. But at least we make sure that the most vulnerable group of people, even if on a number they are a minority group of people, still their happiness is important to protect. On a principle they're justified to do so. I'm proud to propose it.
Dursa.
Thank the DPM for his speech.
Hey,
Yellow.
Nawal. Nawal.
Nawal ki আছে?
আসি একটু লেবু শরবত খেয়ে নে দাঁড়াও
আমিও খাইতে
First.
চাইছিলাম, আমার বাসায় লেবু নাই।
First I have Lebu Sharbat and then I give 81 speech. And I'm almost done with my Lebu Sharbat.
পিটাইতে হবে, বুঝছো নাওয়াল? ঠিক আছে, আমরা
এই আমাদের ডিবেট কেউ দেখতেছ না। This is sad.
লিংক পোস্ট করছো?
হ্যাঁ করছি।
আচ্ছা তাহলে আসলে
একটা ভিউয়ার আছে।
we are the ones that of phase 1 reject except Mahathir.
একটা ভিউয়ার হলো গিয়ে তৌসিফ চেকিং হিজ ভিডিও।
না আমার অন করেন।
Congratulations.
I think it's Ishraq. Hi Ishraq, if you're watching. Nawal, আপনি শুরু করো।
ওকে হয়ে গেছে
Yeah, it's 3 viewers.
হ্যাঁ 3 2 1 The reason why Turjo's entire speech falls down is simply because he does not understand what it means to be unique, although we similarly question why. Ladies and gentlemen, let's understand one thing, right? The reason why uniqueness is defined as uniqueness is because you are different from other people, right? The moment in time when you are forced to dress up like everyone else, when you are forced to talk in the same language that everyone else talks, you have no freedom to feel, you have no freedom or you have no permission to feel unique. That opportunity you have been given to feel unique, to feel different from the crowd, is something that you are not allowed anymore. That is when we tell you that the individual suffers from an inherent problem. The problem where this person cannot celebrate their own individuality, where that person cannot celebrate their own identity, right? We think that's a fundamental problem in this space. But let's further rebut the ideas that Turjo talked about, right? Turjo talks about how the lottery of birth is something that is inherently problematic. We don't think it's true. We think the lottery of birth is something that allows you to celebrate the differences of other people, right? But more importantly, you also understand the problems and the struggles of other people, right? What do I mean by this? I mean that the reason why Mahathir understands that I am a poor person, not take it, sir. The reason why Mahathir understands, or at least wants to understand, that I am a poor person and the problems I suffer from is because Mahathir has seen that I do not live the same life that he does, that I do not go to ecstasy and as frequently as he does. We believe that because of this, it allows you to understand other people's problems, and the individual is forced to understand other people's problems, because the individual is forced to ask himself, why is that person inherently different from me? Why is that person facing problems that aren't inherently that I don't inherently face? Problems that in this situation it shapes my personality, right? It shapes my thinking. It rather shapes the way that I think and shapes my value structure, right? Something that is inside proposition's world doesn't occur, right? Because inside proposition's world, the only thing that you are allowed to celebrate is the similarity of people, right? And we'll show you why the similarity of people is inherently problematic. Right? But rather, we tell you that we stand with the status quo, right? We believe that the status quo in society are having structural and systematic shifts. We believe that society is now becoming more and more inclusive. We can see that with the feminist movement, we can see that with the LGBTQ+ movement. But we believe inherently, it is inherently problematic, right? So now, moving on to my construction. What do I tell you in my construction? In my construction, I'll be showing you why individuals in and of itself don't feel it's necessary to change the mindsets of people, and how in and of itself their social interactions decrease further in this way, right? Not taking it. So first, let's understand what happens the moment you see a person who looks exactly like you, right? You go up to this person, you talk to this person about Charlottesville, about Donald Trump, about the LGBTQ+ movement. But then you realize suddenly that you, a libertarian person, and that person is in and of itself not libertarian. He's a person who's very radical, right? Someone who's a very traditional thinker. In that situation, you think, how is this person so inherently different from you, despite the fact that this person looks so similar to you, walks and talks the same way as you, and wears the same clothing as you, right? In that situation, you don't stop to think that that person's background, where that person's come from, how that person might be religiously or culturally different from you. You don't stop to think that these might be other influencing factors, right? But rather you judge that person on face value, right? In that situation, you think that oh my god, I cannot talk to this person anymore, because even after this person looking exactly like me, this person has inherently different ideologies as me, which means that I cannot never talk to this person ever again, right? That individual then never goes on to talk to this person. And sure, in side propositions world, definitely you go on and approach this individual and you go on and talk to them even in the best case scenario, right? But that person, that libertarian, never goes on and talks to this conservative for a second time or even a third time, right? We think that's fundamentally problematic. Why so? Here's where we come in with our impacts, right? Not tickets, right? Here's where we come with our impacts, right? First of all, your social interactions with people who aren't as like-minded as you is something that decreases, right? You do approach them in certain cases, but you never continue or resume your conversations, right? You discriminate other people who have different ideologies as you. You'd rather agree with people who have the same political point of view, right? Because you think that it's pointless to try to talk to people who are inherently different from you. Because in your world, the differences of these people are never apparent, right? The differences are never celebrated. The idea that you can be unique, the idea that you can be, as an individual, that you can celebrate those differences is something that is never upheld, right? In your world, people are inherently forced to be as similar as they can be. But secondly, and more importantly, in your world, echo chambers are created, right? Liberals talk to liberals, conservatives talk to conservatives. And as a stock argument as it might possibly be, we think it's as very, very harmful, right? Because we think that because of this idea, the third impact comes in, right? We can never reconcile with people of other ideologies, i.e., in the current status quo, you already see a trend where people with disagreeing points of view never go on and talk to these other points of view, right? We think that's extremely important to appreciate or at least respect the point of view of other individuals, right? Where you rationally conclude or you argue as to why your ideology or your point of view is justified. We think under your word, this is never going to occur. Because in a homogeneous society, in this situation, the idea of celebrating differences does not come intuitively to you, right? Because you're not used to seeing different ideas and different perspectives, you don't think that other people might have different ideologies as you, right? Because in your world, the only thing that they can see is similarity in terms of looks and in terms of the language. We think that you discriminate them in terms of ideology. You gentrify these people and you let them to hold grudges against other people, right? Finally, we tell you that social disputes, something that side proposition has been harping about in the very first minute, never solved. That
Wonderful information.
Is never something that occurs, right? Not taken, sir. But rather, in your world, you believe that these people who are having these ideas, who are stemmed or are bred with these radical ideas, are people whose mindsets can never be changed. Because you think that because these people are so similar, yet they have so different ideologies, right? The analogy we bring you is that in these situations, we all tend to generalize all Chinese people to be extremely smart simply because they look extremely similar, right? We think that because of these cases, these kind of generalizations happen, and we never want to know whether or not these people are inherently different from each other. Finally, we think the worst sort of impact that occurs in the side proposition is that the empathy of people decreases, right? Your ability to care for other people's problems decreases because you never realize the struggles of other people, right? You never go on to ask as to whether or not these people act or whether they have these differences. This is where we tell you that take this debate. At least under our world, humans at least have emotions, right? We think that humans at least remain humans under our world. We think humans in our world tend to care for other people's problems, to care for other people's empathy and other people's struggles in living that way. We think that because of this, people have a necessity or want to cater to the needs of other people. We think that under our words, people care for the problems of other people and they go on individually to solve these problems. Right? We don't avoid the problem, we face the problem. We address the elephant in the room, right? Unlike what side proposition is doing. Under our words, and these echo chambers are things that are avoided because now you can learn to respect other people's points of view. Now, instead of going, now even if in our words, even under our words, their clothing is inherently different. At least when you're forced to go on, and when you're forced to go on in these cases and talk to these people, that's when you realize that these people and their cultural differences might try to at least change their minds or try to argue with them.
9 minutes. 9 minutes.
So yeah. Shit. Fuck. What the hell?
আমি POI কতক্ষণ ধরে জিজ্ঞেস করতেছি শেষ হয় না কেন
এই অপোজিশন সাইড একটা POI নিও একজন নাও নাই
go with
Ilham Shafkat by the boy champion adjudicator.
শোনো অনলাইন ডিবেটে আমার POI নিতে ভালো লাগে না ruins the flow a lot so I don't
ask for POI.
এই তুমি কেমন একটা নবাব রে ভাই আমার POI তো ভালো লাগে না আমি নিব না
আর ভালো লাগে না তো
he said
I matter to go
online
through
debate context matters online debate
আমার তোরে ভালো লাগে না
oh thanks তোমাকে আমার খুব ভালো লাগে চলে আসো পাশে
এই সৃজন এটা কি কমেন্ট করছে what the hell
দেখছো
আমি তো DPM করিও না what
hey go Ilham Shafkat God dear debater
knock দিছি knock সাইজ কম না করা বলে 10 লাই DP debate edge করে
Ilham Shafkat hey
Ilham DP
আমি 10 মিনিটের স্পিচ শুনবো এখন
Ilham DP debate edge করবে ঠিক আছে
9 মিনিট শুনলাম আচ্ছা শুনি আচ্ছা তাহলে শুরু করি
8 minutes প্লিজ ভাই
Sure. I'm in the time. 2, 3, 2, 1. The entire op bench characterizes our world as where we go into literal ants and where they're all part of a hive. There's just one problem with that analogy. Under ant colonies, everyone's forced to act the same way. We don't do that under our world. Under our people are still free to act the way they want. And what do I mean by this in particular? They talk about how individuals will be suffering and not able to express their individuality. Understand, you can still go to your workplace, meet all the people who work at your office, who each are unique in their own way, who each have inter-worky values. You have a family with very diverse people even inside the family. Your daughter who might be interested in programming or your son who might be interested in playing the guitar. What's the thing here? The thing is, they're still doing all those things because no one's forcing them to act differently. They just look the same. They are not forced to act the same. And what do I mean by this then? They say that the homogeneity arises precisely because you just look the same, but that's not necessarily true. You just go up to a person and ask, okay, what do you do? They'll answer differently all the time. They paint, they program, they do underwater basket weaving. You, as yourself, even from a child, understand that even though you may all look the same, you can still pursue very different things if you only choose to. What's the difference under our world then? You can choose to define yourself by the values, by the things you pursue, not who you are superficially. And that's the change we bring. I'll be bringing you multiple clashes across my wish list. So firstly, let's talk about why grouping is such a primary factor that they disregard. 3 clashes in this group. Firstly, why it works. Secondly, how it actually increases individual happiness. Thirdly, how it actually deals with problems like class actually better. But firstly, why it's necessary. Understand, all forms of discrimination, even if they're first order, such as the skin color, the sex, or your gender you are, or your dress, they're all discriminated on directly on how you look. Even second order discrimination, such as your wealth or which country are you from, are manifested in the form of how you look, because that's the way they judge you that you're from this country. Why do we discriminate on these people to begin with? The primary cause for most people tends to be fear. You associate actual social harms, such as crimes, such as those of sexual predators, such as the people who are competing for you with a job, as things which don't have relationships with them at all, such as race or sex. And why do you do that? Precisely because you can group society not into just one group, but multiple, several finely split groups. And you can just pin the blame on one group, which doesn't have to include you. And that's how you can shift the blame on one group which isn't you. And why do you do it? Because it's easy to do so. You make the judgment that precisely because they look similar, they must act similar. And what's the problem with this? Multiple, actually. Firstly, ironically enough, by denying them normal human contact, such as a neighbor, not as a threat as they perceive them, you feel that that's when they feel wrong, that's when they're denied rights and good jobs, and that's when they're more likely to actually tend toward more crime and more things, because they're systematically denied from it. Why are they systematically denied from it? Because they're perceived to be as part of a group which commits more social harm, such as committing more likely to be crime, such as black people. Ironically enough, it's under their world where these people, all of them, regardless of whether or not they're actually criminals, get trapped under the same label, and that's when they actually get discriminated against and have to suffer. What happens under our world? You can't do that form of discrimination, precisely because if you actually want to be aware of whether a person is a safety threat to you or not, you have to know whether this guy is a wanted criminal or not whether that this person just happens to look black. But what else? Everyone else is the same. Everyone looks the same. So you can't make that assumption. And more importantly, you're unlikely to generalize everyone doing crimes precisely because you're part of that group where everyone is part of one single group to begin with. Which means you're unlikely to push yourself as a criminal to begin with. Which means whenever you want to judge whether someone is a threat to you or not, you're actually look at things they actually did, not what they actually look like. If you want to talk to them, you don't talk to the person who looks just the prettiest or the least likely person to be a criminal, i.e. not a black person in your world. Because they are all looking like everyone else. That's the kind of change we bring in the world. Why do we increase individual happiness? Because you're free to pursue any activity you want. If you're Asian American, you don't have to be a math whiz. You can do anything you want precisely because they're not defined for you. You can talk to anyone, make friends with anyone which shares the values you have, the activities you do, who actually make you truly happy. Not just coincidentally enough, who happen to be of the same social group as you because you just look the same. Let's talk about class. They said issues like class will never be solved under our world. We say it's actually more likely to be solved under our world. Why? Because you simply can dismiss people, as we already do at present, as these are black people. They don't work hard enough. Besides, because they look exactly the same as you, because they are exactly capable of all the things you are, as you know. You question, they look the same as me, they're capable of all the same things as me, but why are they denied that opportunity? Is this fair to begin with? That's when you're actually more likely to question the class system instead of simply dismissing it as a race problem or sex problem. What's more is, as for values, again, Mahathir's entire conclusion that people are denied their identity falls flat on 2 different grounds. Firstly, it's a stupid conclusion to say that we're going to be throwing out things like national identity or religion under our world. We already tell you, you're free to pursue things that define you in the form of a value, not the things that are but we're just removing things that are superficial, as in how you look. But before attacking that, let's talk about facial identity. What do I mean by this? The idea that black people collectively have some identity and we need to protect them. Understand, even that is a geographical identity of people who have shared values with each other and happen to live in the southern part of the United States. More importantly, their world is the one where we clump all Asian Americans as part of one culture, even though they're clearly not even from remotely close same nations. That's the same with Latino people, where we all clump them all as South Americans culture, whatever that's supposed to be. It's problematic because people end up defining them not by the values they define them for themselves, but how they look. And that defines what kind of roles they can play in society. Under our world, your identity can now be about the values you celebrate. If it's nationalism, do it. If it's religion, do it. These are values precisely because you have the ability to choose them. They're not predetermined by birth. You are responsible for those values, but more importantly, precisely because you choose them, you cherish and celebrate them. Which means these are values which matter to you most are the ones that actually matter in this world now. Because when you're talking to someone else, they don't dismiss you as someone of this guy has black skin. They discuss whether you share the same values as them or not, and more likely to make friends that way. Let's talk lastly about politicality, where they tell you bubbles are going to form and people are unlikely to engage in proper political discourse. Again, their world is worse. Why? Because our tendency in the present is whenever you're a Republican and see someone of a Democratic Party, you see, oh look, he's a black person. He has a natural bias toward the Democratic Party. He can't have a rational reasoning to actually be part of that party. What happens under our world? You're like, okay, he still looks the same as me, but he still disagrees with me. Why? Does he see something I don't? I mean, he can't have a natural bias because I don't have a natural bias because I am the same group as him. That's when you're more likely to actually question that is there actually something on the other party's side that's actually worth looking into, something you might actually support. That's when you're actually more likely in inter-party discourse instead simply in your bubble. We tell you bubbles happen more under their world precisely because you can finally divide groups into people which don't include you. Under our world, everyone is the same, but they're defined by the values they choose for themselves, and that's what's empowering, and we are very proud of this.
Here. Happy birthday.
ইলহাম কি স্পিচ দিলা এটা তো
ভাই এমনি 81 পাই যাই দিন দিছে কাছে বুঝছো
হ্যাঁ
বার্থডে কোক
মানে
বার্থডে ব্যাশ
এখন এটা বার্থডে ব্যাশ না এখন এটা হলো ডেইলি ব্যাশ
ও পিরেক
অন্তরা can you prove yourself going for Mastermind Academia?
Good joke. আচ্ছা 8 minute speech.
Antara.
8 minute speeches, right?
Hey guys, আমি ডিসাইড করছি আমি সৃজনের কমেন্ট থেকে ইন্সপায়ার্ড হয়ে এখন ডিপিএম করা শুরু করব।
Oh shit.
I think
oh shit boy.
Return of guest DPM.
Bro. Srijan mixed up tossives. I think he's thinking about another tossive.
Probably.
ইস এরকম বেলা
Probably.
Tossive I can relate to you, man. আমার সারা জীবন বুঝছো একই জিনিস
ফাট দিন কোন ফাট দিন রং ফাট দিন আমার তো তাও স্পেলিং ডিফারেন্ট আছে
এই ফারদিন এত বেল নাই যে কোন ফারদিন মানুষরা জিজ্ঞেস করবে
Oh damn.
আজকে
Tossive.
আচ্ছা আমি নিজে টাইম করতে পারবো না, সো আই নিড লাইক ফার্স্ট মিনিট কাউন্ট এন্ড 7 মিনিট কাউন্ট।
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে
আমি বলে দেব তো 15 মিনিটের সমস্যা নেই।
আচ্ছা ফারদিন দিবে
না I was messing around.
Okay, I can time.
আমি বলছি 15 মিনিট 7 মিনিটের টাইমার দেব।
আচ্ছা আমি স্টার্ট করলাম।
হ্যাঁ
আচ্ছা টাইম করে give me a first minute count and 7 minutes count.
হ্যাঁ মাতে টাইম করে বলবেন না, আমি মিউট দিলাম।
আচ্ছা স্টার্ট করলাম। 3 2 1 When you remove all differences in terms of looks and sound, you give in to the pressure of microaggressions and systematic oppression, and you silence the identities of minorities and disadvantaged groups. And you tell them that you cannot be yourselves, but certain people in power or certain people who are the majority don't like who you are. And you tell them that it is wrong for you to be black because there are certain obstacles that you need to cross, and those obstacles are not crossed by white people. We tell you that we prefer a world where there is a very vehement, strong Black Lives Matter narratives, and we address the elephant in the room, rather than when you eradicate all differences because you just can't deal with oppression, and you want to dismiss the organic change that we have seen. Because we are living in a world where 100 years ago a Negro could not share a washroom with a white man, and now a black person can go and become the president of the United States. That is a world where we live in, and that is a world that we want to keep on living in. We do not want a world where your identity is dehumanized, or you are dehumanized because your identity has caused for you to face some problems. Those problems are solved much
1
better
minute.
under our world. Moving on to my clashes. My first clash will be, in which world are human beings' happiness and sovereignty better protected? And my second clash is going to be about in which world discourse is better, and which leads to more social change. My first clash. So they tell you that hardships due to racism is the reason, or is the main reason, which is what for which they want to remove all differences in terms of looks and sounds. We tell you that firstly, it is morally abhorrent for people to face hardships due to racism, something that we all agree on. Because if you do not get a job because you're black, that is morally that is the problem of the system, and it's not something that we stand for. However, under our world, you can call out these races, and these races are likely to discriminate based on other grounds as well. They're likely to discriminate based on your religion or political beliefs, something that you do not change in your world. There are still differences in ideologies. So if there is scope for discrimination based on other grounds, you do not really create the kind of utopia that you really talk about. You tell us that you solve one less problem, but it really does not translate to anything, because when there are people who look the same and sound the same, and yet there is still so much tension between people because of their ideologies, you don't really solve the problem. You try to suppress it, because
Point of
we would rather
information.
live in a world where there is sustainable change. Because if you are going to force everyone to look the same, that is not a sustainable change, because there is always going to be tension
Point of
because of
information.
other reasons. But under our world, where you have people who look different and celebrate that and cherish their different identities and uniqueness, and then
Point of
and
information.
there is much more acceptance of the fact that people are different. Because let's draw comparative of worlds. Under your world, there is much less acceptance of differences, because this huge difference of people looking different doesn't exist anymore. So when Irham comes up and tells you that that Republican who looks the same as the Democrat are going to talk, that doesn't happen, because when the person is going to have different ideologies, you can't accept it, because you are not prone to accepting differences in the first place. You aren't prone to accepting blackness and whiteness and brownness, etc., etc. And then we tell you that when they talk about how uniqueness happens in actions and jobs and professions, etc., understand, honorable speaker, that uniqueness in terms of looks and sound is very important. Because under your world, people like a woman in a Bangladeshi village cannot wake up in the morning and wear her tip and go to the riverside. A Muslim man cannot keep a beard and take his son to the mosque
Point of
and adhere to
information.
his political beliefs. A Hindu woman cannot use that vermilion that shows that she's married, and how she celebrates and cherishes and loves that about herself. These small joys that are not really small and
POI.
are an integral part of the human identity is stolen, and your religious identity is wrong because it requires you to look a certain way. So, and then we tell you that under our world, this self-actualization of who you really are happens. So, and then then they tell you that under their world there are stereotypes. Under both of our
POI.
world, there are stereotypes that limit people. I'm going to rebut that before whoever wants to.
If there's a
POI.
locked door in front of you and we remove the locked door itself, would you still go around looking everywhere to find the key to the door?
I'd rather open the door with the key and keep the door open for everyone else, because like it's a weird analogy. I've already told you, when under your world there are less differences, that means that you are less accepting of differences, and any difference that happens or occurs under your world is going to create more tension relatively than under our world. Because under our world, blackness and whiteness and brownness are all accepted and allowed, and we are more like tolerant of each other. Moving on to my second clash about how in which world discourse occurs better. So they tell you that they're going to approach that Republican is going to approach the Democrat, but we tell you, honorable speaker, that that discourse does not have any value because it doesn't lead to anything. At the end of the day, you are always going to be more intolerant than under our world. Under their world, as Nawal has told you, there are enclaves of ideologies, honorable speaker, because firstly, there is no distinct physical feature by which you can distinguish between who, like, for example, you can't have that semicolon tattoo that shows you that you are trying to tell people or trying to make people more aware about suicides. There isn't those like you can't portray your ideologies through how you look. What does that mean? There is no sense of community, honorable speaker. You can't form large communities of people who believe in the same things and I have the same ideologies. That on a practical level has the impact that you can't recruit into social change groups as much. Like you can't, like everyone who has a semicolon tattoo can be a part of a suicide awareness group. But under your world, that just doesn't happen. Under your world, discourse is much less because everyone looks the same, and you cannot distinguish between who has certain ideology that you match with. And I've already told you how you don't really approach that person in the long run, or like when this world, like as this world continues, you don't really approach those people, and you want to live within those small enclaves that you form of people that think like you. And then Irham comes and talks to you about inter-party discourse. Understand, honorable speaker, that when Democrats and Republicans are going to then stand for election, and when you talk about inter-party discourse, it doesn't really work because the reason that a black person votes for Democrats isn't just because Democrats are more likely to give you rights, but because the Democrats have beliefs that are more that make more sense, and these are these beliefs are what we advocate for under our world. Under your world, where you cannot distinguish between who has a certain ideology and whom I can approach, your quality of the discourse decreases significantly. Because as a Muslim woman, I will in our world, I have this community and I have a safety net on which I can fall back on. I have people that I feel are a part of my community, and this sense of community is extremely important. But under your world, the sense of community just does not exist. So from our side, you have gotten examples of how we really value is integral part of human identity, how looking different and sounding different is necessary and is something that we celebrate and cherish. And if looking different causes problems under your world, under our world, then that is something that we can tackle because the quality of our discourse is much better, as Mahathir Nawal I have told you. And then we tell you that when ideas like beauty being a lottery of birth, these things are being tackled. Like there is narrative of how being fair isn't the only way you can be beautiful, and
9 minutes
that it has. So that is the kind of world that we advocate for, and we're very proud to oppose. Thank you.
Can we come?
Sorry, আমি ইয়েতে বিপি ডিবেটে চলে গেছি। Yeah, reply.
Yes. Acha, everyone, thanks for the debate. Cross floor, shake hands, get out of the hangouts while we decide. Fardin, bero. Acha, guys, edges. Edges. না আপনার
Yes, হ্যাঁ বল।
আপনার চলে গেছে কেন?
ও আচ্ছা। হ্যাঁ ব্রো। ডিবেটে কি ক্লিয়ার ছিল না?
আমার কাছে মনে হয় না ওয়েট, এটা আমার সাথে হয়, তুই কারে দিছিস?
হ্যাঁ, আমার ক্লিয়ার ছিল না, আমার ক্লিয়ার ছিল না। আমার মনে মানে টু মি লাইক একটুর জন্য আই গভ জিতে।
আমার কাছে মোটামুটি ক্লিয়ার মার্জিনে, আচ্ছা না মোটামুটি ক্লিয়ার
না, আমার জন্য ক্লিয়ার আছে, মোটামুটি ক্লিয়ার আছে, লাইক মাইল্ডলি, মানে আচ্ছা আমি বলি, দিস ওয়াজন্ট দ্য ক্লিয়ারেস্ট অফ ডিবেটস, বাট লাইক ওয়াজন্ট লাইক অ্যাজ ব্যাড অ্যাজ মোস্ট অনলাইন ডিবেটস ইউজুয়ালি গো।
হ্যাঁ এক্স্যাক্টলি ওটাই।
আমার মনে হয় এখানে
ডিবেট স্ট্যান্ডার্ডস অনেক ভালো।
হ্যাঁ ওইটাই। না আমার এখানে প্রবলেম আছে মোস্টলি দ্যাট ওই যে ওদের কি বলে, মানে আমার একটা জিনিস একদমই ইয়ে হয় না, বিকজ লাইক ওরা বারবার মানে বোথ সাইড ওয়ান্টেড দ্য সেম গোল, যে কি বলে ওই যে ওদের দুই সাইডেরই ইয়ে ছিল যে দে ওয়ান্ট ইকুয়াল রাইটস এন্ড ইকুয়াল অপরচুনিটিস ফর এভরিবডি।